Now, do you remember where you were when Pearl Harbor was bombed?
Mm-hmm. The medical school.
Where were you? Like in the cafeteria, or where were you?
In the lounge. We had a lounge there. I remember the word came around then.
You mean someone came in and said something?
One of the students around said, "Did you hear that Pearl Harbor was bombed?"
And what was your reaction?
I thought this was a terrible thing.
And so then when did you join the Army?
Well, I finished my internship in July of '43 and had applied to the Army and was waiting for them to call me. And I'd lost about 16 or 18 pounds in 1 year during my internship, working hard and not eating very much. And took a job as a camp physician on a proviso. As soon as I got my telegram from the Army, I would leave. And I was there for about 6 weeks out of the 8 weeks I was committed to be, and came back eating double portions, about 6 pounds of the weight that I'd lost. Entered the Army in August of '43. Was sent to basic training center of the Air Force in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Now, basic training was in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Right.
And that was in '43.
That was in '43.
And what was that like?
The Basic Training Center was an intake organization in which raw recruits came in and they were trained. As a physician, I was required in that place to be working in a clinic. And in those years, black troops were segregated. There was no mixture of troops.
Right.
So I was assigned to a black troop clinic. All the patients were black. Each morning there would be, during the week, about 300 on sick call, mostly saying they had colds. They found out that if you go on sick call, it would take at least until noon before you would be seen or cleared. There are 2 physicians in the clinic working. And it became popular knowledge that if you went on sick call, you can get out of your duties. So as time went on, there were more and more people coming on sick call, more of the black soldiers.
Right.
So much so that the camp commandant, not the doctor in charge, but the colonel or general who was in charge of the camp, I don't know who it was,
Right.
said that all physicians had to start, of those who were in the black clinics, had to start at 6 a.m. sick call. So much so that I couldn't eat breakfast. The cafeteria, the mess, was not open at that hour.
Right.
So I would have a bunch of snacks of some sort and an apple, and that would be my breakfast. And I would be working steadily from 6 a.m. to about 11 or 11:30, seeing soldiers on sick call. This was during the week when they were required to be doing their duty, marching or whatever they're supposed to do. On Sunday, when they were not required to do any duties, we had 10 on sick call instead of 300 or 400. So that in actuality of the 300 or 400, 10 were really sick.
Right.
I suppose that really, in retrospect, they had nothing to gain, the black troops. It was not really their war.
Right.
They were being discriminated against and so on.
Mm-hmm. So what was the use of putting in a full effort because they didn't feel they were...
It wasn't their war.
Uh-huh. So then what happened after basic training? You got shipped overseas?
Well, was not really basic training.
Mm-hmm.
It's a basic training center for people coming in, but not basic training for me.
All right. So then what happened to you after that?
Actually, most physicians normally would go to a basic training center in Pennsylvania, I don't recall the name of it, where they were indoctrinated into Army techniques and what was required of them in the Army.
Mm-hmm.
But since we didn't go that route, we had a medical administration officer teaching us how to march and how to salute and how to do this and how to do that. So we had our basic training while we were working.
Okay, so then when did you finally go overseas?
Well, from there I was transferred to the 100th General Hospital, which was being formed under a Colonel Seeley, who was regular Medical Corps Army. He was a regular Army officer in the Medical Corps.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a number of surgeons and medical officers and nurses and corpsmen, all that was necessary to make up a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
We we were assigned to Fort Dix and were there for a couple of months before we went overseas as a unit. Went overseas, it must have been January or February, must have been February of 1944. And landed in Greenock, Scotland, and then we shipped down to Colwyn Bay, which is in North Wales. And we were billeted in different houses for about a month. And then came down to a suburb of Bristol, a place called Frenchay, in which we took over a British hospital. It was I guess a British Army hospital, and it was not built as a one big unit, but small individual barracks kind of thing. They could have been originally just a barracks rather than a hospital. We were there and received some D-Day casualties. And about 3 weeks after D-Day, we were shipped over to France. And for about 6 weeks, we were living in a field in pup tents.
Where in France was that?
This was near Saint-Mary-Église, Normandy.
And what month was that?
D-Day was June, I guess. This must have been in July.
Just a month later.
About a month later, we were in France.
Right. Were you apprehensive?
No. Then I remember we were I was with a party of the hospital, different officers going to look for a hospital to set up the hospital in. And we looked at a large hospital, a regular civilian hospital, in a place called Saint-Cloud, which is a suburb of Paris on the way to Versailles.
Right.
And it looked very nice, but they decided it was too far back, so they decided on an old French army barracks in a place called Bar-le-Duc,
Mm.
which many years ago was famous for its preserves.
Right.
So that when you would say, I'd like some Bar-le-Duc, it meant give me some preserves.
Right.
And when the Battle of the Bulge occurred, they needed more medical officers in the infantry. Since I was the youngest medical officer in the outfit, George Rosen and I were sent to the 90th Infantry. And George Rosen and I met as a friend of, I'm just trying to remember his name, kind of blank. I'll come back to it later. In any event, both he and I were shipped to the 90th Infantry. He became a battalion aid surgeon. He was not as lucky as I was. I was assigned to a collecting company which ran the ambulances. We sent the ambulances to the front where the battalion aid surgeon had patched up the wounded. We collected them and brought it to us, and we patched them up some more and sent it back to regimental. There was a MASH-like camp, but not as advanced as it was in the Korean War.
Mm.
And if they weren't unable to do whatever they had to do, if it's real major, like abdominal surgery or neurological surgery, they would send it back to the general hospital, like the 100th General where I was, or to perhaps a specialized hospital which did particularly type of surgery.
Mm. So how far were you from the front lines?
Well, when we got to the 90th Infantry, I remember we were not doing very much, and then about a couple of weeks after I joined them, we moved up to close the Battle of the Bulge, and I remember, in a small Belgian town called Trois Vierges, Three Virgins. It was the coldest night I ever remember, in which I was sleeping on a stretcher, fully clothed, in my sleeping bag, with 3 or 4 blankets on top of me, and shivering all night long.
Mm.
It was real cold.
Mm.
And after the Battle of the Bulge, we moved on into Germany. How far was I from the front line? There was a constantly shifting, moving, because there's a rapid movement there after we crossed the Rhine.
Mm.
And we're approximately a mile from the front lines at all times.
Mm. So then you went into Germany.
Yes, we were in Germany, and remember we went through the suburbs of Frankfurt am Main, a place called Oppenheim.
What year was that? I mean, what month and what year?
January or February of 45.
Right. And what did it look like? Was it?
Just countryside, nothing special.
Oh, you didn't go into the city.
No,
Mm.
we didn't go into the city.
And then what happened?
Well, we went through mostly small towns, rural areas.
Mm.
One town or another didn't seem very much different.
Right.
We subsided on K rations.
Right.
which was for breakfast. You'd have a tin of ham, I guess. You opened it up with a very small can opener. 3 cigarettes in there. I still didn't know about cigarettes. And there were 3 K rations per day. Each had 3 cigarettes, a little pack of 3 cigarettes in that.
And you gave yours away?
Always gave it.
So, did you ever see any concentration camps at all?
Not the concentration camps, no. When the war was over, we ended up in Czechoslovakia, and some Jewish young women who were in a sort of a nursing home, recuperating from whatever illnesses they had. Not that I did very much, they just asked me to come. And one of them was Ilana Kurz, who got in touch with me after the war. And I helped her out by writing some letter that helped her get some restitution money.
Wow. Okay. So, when you were in Frankfurt, where is Frankfurt in Germany? Is that in the eastern?
That's in western Germany. It's on the Main, Frankfurt am Main.
The southwestern?
About the middle, I think, and more to the north.
And so then you went down?
And went down, and then across Bavaria.
You went through Bavaria?
Went through Bavaria.
And did you go through any towns there?
I think we went through Cologne, which is a city.
Right.
Went through...
what year, what month did you go through Cologne? You don't remember?
I can't remember.
Did you see any evidence of any of the Nazi, insignias? Was it all over the place, or had it already been taken down? Or
they've been taken down. What you saw was white bed sheets hanging out of windows, and these people were sort of flags of surrender. No one showed any Nazi flags anymore.
I see. So then, how long were you in Czechoslovakia?
About a couple of weeks, I guess.
And then after that, what happened?
Well, we then moved to another small town called Amberg, and then Weiden, spelled Weiden. And then I left out one town. Before we got to that, we were in Freimt, which is a small agricultural village that we were in. There was a river there called the River Freimt, and it was fed by mountain streams. And midsummer, you wanted to get in there, you put a toe in, it would turn blue, and about a half an hour you'd get into your waist, and you were shivering and shaking and jumping in ice cold water. That's as far as I can get in, to my waist.
Right.
As I said, from there we went to Weiden and Amberg, and then the last town we were in was a town called Straubing, which was a bigger town, and that was on the Danube.
Right.
And from Straubing we went back home. However, while after the war was over, I was lucky to win a draw in which we were able to go to Switzerland, and we were there for a week. It took about a week on the train to get there. And then I won another draw, or perhaps took time off. Didn't make any difference at that point, to go to Scotland. And that took at least about 2 weeks on the train, just getting there.
And then what happened?
Well, I did sightseeing and came back and spent a week in Paris on the way back.
And how did you get back?
By train,
No.
Army train.
How did you get back to the U.S.?
Oh, by ship.
And what month was that?
That was in January of 46, I think.
So when you got back to the dock, was Grandma waiting there?
No. She didn't know I was coming.
She didn't?
No.
So when you got back home, she must have been very relieved, because she must have been a nervous wreck the whole time you were away.
I guess she was, but I wrote regularly, and I think I reassured that I wasn't really front line and didn't come back.
So was there a party at all when you came back? No?
No.
So when you got back in 46, then what happened? What did you do?
Well, I was looking for residency, and I got one at the city hospital
And how long were you there?
for 2 years.
All right. From 46 to 48?
48, yeah.
And then?
And in 48, I set up practice in Brooklyn, which was not very successful at all.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, in 1950, found a place in Forest Hills to practice, and then moved there.
Mm-hmm.
But meanwhile, in 1949, as you know, we married your mother.